wake up in the pitch dark to a sound that makes your blood run cold. A dry, frantic scratching coming from right inside your bedroom wall. A few days later, the scratching stops, but a smell begins. A heavy, rotting, sickly, sweet stench that seeps through the drywall, ruins your family dinners, and forces your kids out of the living room. You call the man in the white truck. He charges you $500, drops a few black plastic bait boxes around your foundation, and promises to come back next month for another fee. He tells you the poison is working. What he does not tell you is what that exact poison is about to do to your family dog, your barn cat, and the owls hunting in your yard. Now I want you to sit with this for a moment. Take a breath and think about how we have been taught to handle the things that invade our homes. There is a way to clear every single rat and mouse off your property using a simple, soft white powder that is probably sitting in your kitchen pantry right now. It costs about $1 at the Dollar General. It uses the rat's own biology against it. And most importantly, when that rat dies, its body is completely harmless to the barn cat that finds it, the neighbor's dog that sniffs it, or the hawk that carries it away to the tree line. No monthly contracts, no holes chopped in your drywall, no collateral damage to the creatures that actually belong on your land. My name is Daniel Yoder. I am Amish, and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My wife, Rebecca, and I have lived our whole lives surrounded by granaries, corn cribs, chicken coops, and barns. To a rat, an American farm in the fall, right when the air gets that bitter chill, is a 5-star hotel with an all-you-can-eat buffet. But we do not buy poison. We never have. My grandfather taught me how to handle pests by understanding how the natural world works. Not by fighting it with a chemical spray can or a toxic green block. He used to sit on the porch, whittling a piece of hickory and tell me, "Daniel, nature doesn't negotiate. You either work within its rules or you pay the price." Today, I am going to show you exactly how to work within those rules. I am going to give you the honest, old-fashioned recipe that actually works. The distinct variations you must use for different types of rodents, the step-by-step way to protect your home's perimeter, and the lethal mistakes people make when they try to learn pest control from a quick internet video. Stay with me, because before this video is over, I am going to save the life of your family dog, and I am going to save you from breathing in a sickness that puts strong men in the hospital every single year. Let me first explain the philosophy of the old farmers. Because once you understand this, the whole industry of modern commercial pest control starts to look like pure foolishness. We believe in the chain of life. Providence gave us predators to control the prey. The great horned owl in the barn rafters, the red-tailed hawk riding the thermal winds above the pasture, the working barn cat prowling the fence line. These are the real God-given pest controllers. They work for free, and they never take a day off. When the man in the white exterminator truck comes to your house, he puts down baits made of heavy chemicals. You will see names on the label like warfarin, brodifacoum, or difacinone. These are what the scientists call first and second generation anticoagulants. That is a fancy word that simply means they stop the rat's blood from clotting. But here is the terrible truth. The industry tries to keep quiet. The truth my neighbor over the ridge learned the hard way last spring. It takes 4 to 6 days for that poison to actually kill a rat. During those 4 to 6 days, the rat becomes dizzy, slow, and incredibly thirsty. It loses its natural fear of the open. It wanders out into the broad daylight, stumbling across your driveway or your back lawn. Now to an owl, a hawk, or your pet cat, a slow-moving, stumbling rat in the daylight is the easiest meal in the world. So they swoop down, or they pounce, and they eat it. And when they eat that rat, they eat a stomach completely full of unmetabolized poison. It is called secondary poisoning. My neighbor paid $400 to an exterminator, and 2 weeks later, He found his prize barn cat dead near the tractor shed. The hawk bleeds out internally. The cat goes into organ failure. The neighbor's golden retriever eats a poisoned mouse that wandered into the yard. And suddenly, you are rushing to the emergency vet in the middle of the night. The pest control company sells you a poison that kills the very animals trying to help you. And once your natural predators are dead, who do you have to rely on when the next family of rats moves in? You have to rely on the man in the white truck. You have to pay his monthly fee forever. They are selling you a solution that guarantees a permanent problem. We do not do that. We use something else. We use sodium bicarbonate. You know it as ordinary, everyday baking soda. Let me explain the simple, brilliant science of why baking soda kills a rat, but will not hurt your dog, your cat, or your grandchildren playing in the yard. It all comes down to a tiny piece of biology. A rat or a mouse cannot burp. They cannot vomit. Their stomachs have a biological structure called the margoplicatus. It is a fold of tissue that makes it physically impossible for them to regurgitate or expel gas the way a human, a dog, or a cow can. When a rat eats a dry mixture of baking soda and a bait they love, that baking soda travels down into their stomach and hits their stomach acid. Now, if you ever took a science class, or if you have ever baked a cake with your mother, you know what happens when baking soda meets an acid. It creates an enormous amount of carbon dioxide gas. Because the rat cannot burp, that gas builds up. The pressure expands their stomach until it ruptures, and the rat dies. It is an internal physical reaction, not a chemical poison. And here is the absolute beauty of the chain of life. If your cat finds that dead rat the next morning and eats it, what happens to the cat? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because baking soda is just salt and carbonate. The cat's stomach simply digests it. The hawk is safe. The owl is safe. The dog is safe. You have broken the pest without breaking the chain. Now let me give you the exact recipe. This is where most folks who read about this trick online fail. Because they mix it wrong, or they use the wrong bait, and then they complain that the rats just walked right past it. You need two things for the base: pure baking soda and a dry grain. Jiffy cornmeal mix works wonderfully, or whatever cheap dry cornmeal you have in the pantry. The ratio is the most crucial part. You want 2 parts baking soda to 1 part cornmeal. For example, 2 cups of baking soda mixed thoroughly with 1 cup of cornmeal in a dry bowl. Rule number 1, and I cannot stress this enough: do not add water. Do not let it get wet. If it gets wet in the bowl, or if you leave it out in the rain, the bubbling gas reaction happens in the dirt before the rat ever eats it, and it becomes completely useless. Keep it bone dry. Now we must flavor it. Baking soda tastes salty and bitter, and rats are highly intelligent creatures. They suffer from something the experts call neophobia, a deep, instinctual fear of new things in their environment. If you just put a pile of white powder in a corner, they will ignore it. You have to make it irresistible. And to do that, you must know what you are hunting. If you are dealing with mice, the small, quick, darting ones that get into your kitchen drawers and leave those tiny droppings behind the toaster, you need to know that mice have a sweet tooth. Take your dry baking soda and cornmeal base and stir in just 1 or 2 tablespoons of pancake syrup, molasses, or raw honey. Just enough to give it a rich, sweet smell and a slight clumping texture, but not enough to make it a wet paste. If you are dealing with rats, the big, heavy, smart roof rats or Norway rats that live in the barn, the basement, or the crawl space, do not use syrup. Rats do not care as much for sweets. Rats want fat, they want salt. For rats, you take your dry mix and you stir in 1 or 2 tablespoons of warm bacon grease. When Rebecca fries bacon on a Saturday morning, she pours the drippings into a glass jar by the stove. That grease is pure gold for pest control. You can also use beef tallow. Let me tell you, A rat can smell bacon grease from 100 yards away. It is an absolute magnet to them. Mix that fat through the dry powder until it is crumbly, like pie crust dough. That is your bait. Now I must stop right here and give you a brutal, honest warning. This is a matter of life and death for your pets. And I will not let you make the mistake I see, being passed around all over the internet. There are videos of people telling you to mix cocoa powder or chocolate chips into your baking soda rat bait, because rats like the smell. Listen to me very closely. Rebecca and I would never ever allow a single grain of cocoa powder into a bait station on our farm. Chocolate and cocoa powder contain a compound called theobromine. Theobromine is highly toxic, even deadly to dogs and cats. If you mix cocoa powder with baking soda and leave it on your porch, and your neighbor's golden retriever comes along and licks that bowl clean because it smells like brownies, you will be rushing that dog to the emergency vet, and he might not survive the night. Never use chocolate. Never use cocoa powder. Stick to cornmeal, syrup, or bacon grease. Those are regular food items. They are perfectly safe for any animal that wanders by. Let us talk about where to put this bait, because this brings me to the second brutal truth about rat control. The truth about the dead rat in the wall. If you put this baking soda bait inside your house, under your kitchen sink, inside the pantry, or up in your attic, the rat will eat it. It will feel its stomach start to swell. It will feel sick, and it will do what all sick animals do. It will retreat to its nest to hide. Its nest is inside your walls, under your floorboards, or deep in your fiberglass insulation. It will die right there in the dark. And you will spend the next 3 weeks dealing with a smell so terrible you will want to move out of your own home. Followed by an infestation of big, lazy blowflies hatching from the carcass. So here is the Amish rule of thumb. Bait goes outside. Traps go inside. You take your bacon grease and baking soda mix, and you put it in small plastic containers with holes cut in the sides, or professional tamper-resistant bait stations if you can get them at the hardware store. You place these stations along the outside perimeter of your house, along the concrete foundation, by the woodshed, out near the chicken coop, tucked under the edge of the back deck. You put them right up against the walls, because rodents are practically blind, and they use their whiskers to run along flat edges. You are trying to kill the rats while they are out foraging in the yard, before they ever cross your threshold. But what about the ones already inside the house? The ones keeping you awake, scratching in the wall. For those, we do not use bait. We use something much, much better. We use the bucket trap. This is the greatest, cheapest, most effective indoor rodent catcher ever devised by man, and it costs about $2 to build. I taught my grandson Ellie how to make one, and he had it built in 10 minutes. You take a standard 5-gallon bucket, the kind you get at Home Depot or Lowe's. Across the open top of the bucket, you run a piece of stiff wire, like a piece cut from a wire coat hanger. Right in the middle of that wire, you string an empty aluminum soda can, so it spins freely like a wheel on an axle. You take a spoonful of peanut butter and smear it all around the center of that soda can. Finally, you take a scrap piece of wood, a yardstick, a piece of trim, a thick branch, and lean it against the outside of the bucket like a little ramp. Here is what happens in the dark while you are sleeping. The mouse or rat smells the peanut butter. It climbs the wood ramp. It stands on the rim of the bucket and reaches out to get the peanut butter. The moment it steps onto the soda can, the can spins. The rat loses its footing and drops straight down into the bucket. The can spins right back into place, completely resetting itself for the next one. If you want to dispatch the rats permanently, you put 3 inches of water in the bottom of the bucket, along with a few squirts of liquid dish soap. The dish soap breaks the surface tension of the water, so the rat cannot float. It sinks and drowns quickly and quietly. If you do not have the stomach to kill them, leave the bucket dry. In the morning, you will have a bucket full of live, jumping mice. You simply put a lid on it, carry the bucket a mile down the road, and let them go in the deep woods. Why is the bucket trap the ultimate indoor weapon? Because it resets itself. A standard wooden snap trap catches one mouse, and then it is useless until you hear the snap, get out of bed, and empty it. A bucket trap can catch 20 mice in a single night. And best of all, the dead mice are in the bucket. They are not in your walls. They are not rotting under your floorboards. You simply take the bucket out, empty it, and your house stays clean and smelling sweet. Now I need to stop and speak to you about the most dangerous part of this entire process. It is not the rats themselves. It is what the rats leave behind. If you have rats or mice in your shed, your attic, or your garage, you are going to find their droppings. And the first instinct of any clean, hard-working homeowner is to grab a stiff broom or a shop vacuum and clean it all up. Stop, put the broom down. Do not even plug that vacuum in. I am going to tell you something that puts country folks and city folks alike in the intensive care unit every single year. Rat droppings, specifically from deer mice, which are incredibly common in the upper Midwest, the Northeast, and across America, carry a disease called hantavirus. It is a severe, sometimes fatal respiratory disease. When rat droppings dry out over time, the virus becomes dormant in the dust. If you sweep that floor with a broom or suck it up with a high-powered vacuum, you throw millions of microscopic viral particles into the air. You breathe them into your lungs, and within a week, you feel like you have the flu. A few days later, your lungs begin to fill with fluid. Rebecca is absolutely militant about this on our farm, and she has drilled it into our children and grandchildren. You must be militant too. If you find a nest or a pile of droppings, you do not sweep. You get a plastic spray bottle. You mix 1 part household bleach to 10 parts water. You put on a heavy-duty N95 mask and thick rubber gloves. You go to that pile of droppings, and you spray it with the bleach mixture until it is completely soaked. You let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. The bleach kills the virus, and the heavy moisture traps the dust so it cannot fly into the air. Then you take paper towels. Wipe it all up while it is still wet. Put it into a plastic garbage bag. Tie it tight and throw it away in the outside trash. Only then, once the area is clear and wet, is it safe to mop or scrub the floor. Do not ever gamble with your lungs for the sake of sweeping a floor 5 minutes faster. Let us take a step back and look at the whole picture of what we have built here today. You are using a cheap, dry mixture of baking soda and cornmeal outside your house. It reacts physically inside the rat, killing it without turning its body into a toxic time bomb for your neighborhood owls and cats. You are using a simple, self-resetting 5-gallon bucket trap inside your house to catch the intruders cleanly, ensuring nothing rots inside your walls. And you are cleaning up the aftermath safely with bleach and water, protecting your family's lungs from an invisible killer. You have spent perhaps $5 total. You have used no harsh environmental chemicals. You have respected the chain of life. And you have completely outsmarted an entire industry built on charging you monthly subscription fees. But I will leave you with one final truth, the one my grandfather used to repeat every fall, when the cold weather drove the field mice indoors, looking for warmth. Daniel, he would say, you can kill 1,000 rats, but if you leave the door open and the grain spilled on the floor, 1,000 more will come to the funeral. Baiting and trapping are only the cure. Exclusion is the prevention. A rat can collapse its rib cage and squeeze through a hole the size of a quarter. A mouse can squeeze through a gap the size of a dime. Walk the perimeter of your house in the daylight. Look at where the air conditioning pipes enter the brick. Look at the rubber seals on the corners of your garage doors. Look at the crawl space vents and the dryer exhaust. If you find a hole, do not just spray expanding foam into it. Rats will chew through yellow spray foam like it is cotton candy. You must go to the hardware store and buy a pack of coarse steel wool. Stuff that steals wool tightly into the hole, packing it deep, and then spray your expanding foam over it to hold it in place and seal out the drafts. A rat's teeth never stop growing, so they love to chew. But the moment they bite into steel wool, it cuts their gums, it hurts them, and they stop immediately. Go into your garage and look at your pet food. Store your dog food, your chicken feed, and your bird seed in heavy galvanized metal trash cans with tight-fitting lids, not in the paper sacks they came in from Tractor Supply. Sweep up the spilled seed. Fix the dripping outdoor spigot so they do not have a water source. Take away their food, take away their water, take away their doorways, and the battle is already won before it even begins. This is how the old farmers did it. Not with expensive contracts, not with dangerous poisons scattered carelessly around the yard, but with observation, common sense, and a deep, abiding respect for the way the natural world is balanced. So here is what I want you to do this week. Walk around your property. Look at your feed bags, your dog food bins, and the dark corners of your garage. Look for those little black droppings. If you find them, remember the bleach rule and your N95 mask. Then go to your kitchen. Mix 2 cups of baking soda with 1 cup of cornmeal. Add a little warm bacon grease if you have big rats, or a little maple syrup if you have small mice. Put it in a safe container outside along the walls. And tonight, grab a 5-gallon bucket and build a trap for the garage. Once you try this, come back and tell me in the comments below. Have you ever had to cut a hole in your drywall to get a dead, poisoned rat out of your house because you listened to the exterminator? Tell me that story, because there is someone reading the comments right now who is thinking about buying a box of poison at the hardware store, and your story might just be the thing that stops them. I read every single one of your comments, and I learned from them just as much as you learned from me. Next time, since we are talking about keeping the outside creatures where they belong, I am going to show you the old way. Rebecca keeps copperheads and black snakes from slithering into our chicken coops to steal eggs. It has absolutely nothing to do with traps, poisons, or shovels. It involves a very specific type of root planted right along the fence line that snakes absolutely refuse to slither across. It is simple. It is beautiful. It smells wonderful. And it has worked on this land for over 100 years. Until then, respect the owls, check your perimeters, and remember that the people who built this country knew a thing or two about surviving without a subscription.